Gee, these are strange seconds. Well, we seem to have got to zero. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our little open board meeting of the Open Knowledge Foundation Network Australia. You can even see that I've got a little name tag, Nicholas Gruen. That's who I am. I'm the chair, and we're going to have a meeting for what was going to be an hour, but is now going to be 53 minutes. I'm told that I need to start with this slide. It's now disappeared again. But this is, sorry, various things are beeping at me. So this is, if you click on that slide or on the what has been supplied to you via David Flanders, you'll see a link to a report which we launched last Thursday very successfully at breakfast in Parliament House. The report argues that an entire 50% of Joe Hockey's 2% growth target could be achieved by adopting open data. It shows how that would be done. It gives some numbers, argues that it's worth $16 billion a year, and sketches out a canvas which doesn't just involve public sector information, that is information which has been collected by governments or funded by governments, and research data which has been funded by governments, but much more widely. And it asks questions about how governments can create the enabling conditions in which firms and individuals find it to their taste and in their interests to publish more data. And then once that data is published, if it's published in a machine-readable form, it becomes a potential public good, and all sorts of benefits can come from it. The launch was very successful. Tony Shepherd spoke after I spoke, and the background, I guess, is that the Treasury are pretty enthusiastic about the ideas, but there is some doubt as to whether they can get them onto the agenda of the G20. But that's, I don't know how much people want to interest themselves in that. But anyway, have a look at you can click on those slides if you want to. I'll just put the link up again, and if anyone wants to have a look at them and ask me any questions, I'm very happy to answer them.
Very interesting report. I'm really interested in how Australia compares to the rest of the world, Nick.
Yeah, well, if you look at, so if you go to the relevant website and you look at the report, you will see that we're basically third in the G20, but we would have been third in the world around about 2009. We're now about 8th or 9th in the world. So let me see, that's up on the screen. So I'll try and take you, there's a sort of spider's web diagram, and I don't know whether I must have it here, just hang on. There's a spider's web diagram, and I'll tell you the page, and it shows you where Australia is at least in the estimation of the fine organisation that we're representing in this meeting, compared with other G20 countries. And it wouldn't have looked so good if we'd have compared it to all countries. So that's page 10 of the report. Yeah.
I think David,
go on.
Oh, I'm just saying David's posted the link to the page. Yep.
Yeah. So now it's gone again. We're on another page.
Or page 10. That's right.
Yeah. Well, that might be page 10 of the overview. And we want page 10 of the report.
Yep.
So the fact that we've slipped in the rankings, Nicholas, is that just because other countries have really got on board since the original?
Yeah, I wouldn't say we've gone backwards, but we've made slower progress than they have, and we were regarded by the international community by the time we finished the Government 2.0 report as one of the three big leaders. And that report was taken to be really exemplary in a bunch of ways because it was a very open report. We got it all done in 6 months. We blogged the whole thing all the way through. Anyone could participate. And, you know, it was just, so I can send you, in fact, I might try and find it, Andre de Maia, the Government 2 guy from Gartner, you know, wrote us up as the best thing since sliced bread, really, and just thought we were terrific. And so we were seen to be really, really going great guns. And on
Australia is leading?
Sorry?
Do you mean Australia is leading?
Yes.
Nick?
I meant that in 2009, Australia was seen to be leading the world with the UK and the US. We were the three countries who had very deliberately put this in the case of both the UK and the US at a head of government level, and in the case of Australia at a senior minister was clearly very engaged in it, and our Prime Minister Rudd at the time was somewhat less engaged, but making the right kind of noises. Then basically the US and the UK have taken off. I mean, the UK, sort of progress the UK has made is really spectacular. Things like the My Data initiative, all the resources they put into web development within government, just a whole suite of things in the area of innovation in government, digital innovation, data. There's a really nice, in those slides, there's a really nice comparison between the website. I'll get you the two links if you like, just hang on a minute. But there's a really strong comparison between websites, two websites, the one for the Australian Public Service Commission and the other for the equivalent in the UK, and this is all around Felix Barbalet's translation of the data into apsjobs.info, which you can look up, which he's now more or less discontinued. Because he has to keep reconfiguring the work that he does every few months to scrape the data off the Word files and the PDF files. And in the meantime, you can, and so at the launch, I showed what would happen in the UK, which is that he just goes to the website and says whether he gets a choice of whether to download it as a CSV file, an Excel file, an XML format, you name it. Just chalk and cheese, basically.
And when you mentioned, Nicholas, that you know, was it half of Joe Hockey's growth target could be achieved via open data? What would that be? You're looking beyond PSA for that?
Yeah. So that is PSI and better or more open research data would make up about less than half of that 1%. So that 1% is 50% of the 2% growth target, and we reckon that better PSI and better open data in research would make up about 1/7 of the growth target, or 2/7 of the total that we came up with, which was 1% or 50% of the 2% target.
So what would the rest be?
The rest is getting open data out there. So I give an example of a thing which I took to the summit, the 2020 summit, and it's on page 39. Windows on Workplaces is an example. Windows on Workplaces is a proposal whereby the government works on a standard with the private with non-government bodies in the for-profit and not-for-profit sector to come up with a standard against which employers can report data, for instance, employee satisfaction data and stuff like that. So firms that would report to that standard would then be able to publicly disclose their performance. Why would they do that? Because they're better performers than your average. And if you did that, then you would, you would get a huge amount of data out there. It would be hugely beneficial because you would be able to lower the cost of matching employees to jobs and improve productivity. And we've got there's a very nice study in education which showed that improving the match between a teacher and the classroom, that is matching teachers better to classrooms, gives you a result in terms of outcomes, which is equivalent to improving teacher quality, which is a kind of holy grail of educational policy at the moment. So that's just one example. There's another one, which is the 23andMe example of consumer genomics, which wasn't actually in our calculations because the G20 don't have health as one of their themes. More and more economic policy seems to be about, similar to organising a ball. You've got to choose the theme and then you go out and measure things. And apparently they decided not to put healthcare in there. I happen to think that data and healthcare, are just incredibly, what we could do in healthcare with data is absolutely massive.
There's actually a fair bit of talk about open data recommendations around science and research in general, not specifically on healthcare. Can you talk a bit about those?
Not a lot, because it's not one of the themes, but I completely agree. But the thing is that we do have a lot of, because the government funds most research, we have a lot of purchase on that, and we have for many years, quite a few years anyway, had a government policy that government-funded research should, that government-funded researchers should open their data. It's just a great, not only their data but their publications. It's just that, like lots of other areas of policy, this is fine at the high level. Is very, very triumphantly announced at high levels, and then it takes a great deal of effort to actually get it happening on the ground, and that is honoured in the breach.
Right. Look, I think. Thank you very much. This is awesome. That's a
one other thing I'll say. We didn't put it in the report, I don't think, but there are some really quite interesting private sector initiatives in that area. So there is a private sector data sharing initiative amongst big pharma, GlaxoSmithKline, and a number of the other big pharmaceutical companies, and a bunch of other people are sharing data on a range of non-communicable diseases which are a very big deal, like diabetes, obesity, and so on. Actually, I'm not sure. Obesity isn't really a disease, but diabetes, some autoimmune diseases, and so on. So that's also a very exciting initiative. But we were producing this thing at breakneck speed, and it wasn't in the themes, and we were being, Martin Tisney was very strict with us. I'm going to sneeze. No, I'm not. So we didn't get it in there, but there are lots of very exciting things happening. Not enough, of course. But.
To keep us on agenda, I'm going to suggest we move on. I think that's a fantastic report. It's a conversation I think we'd be happy to carry forward in the next set. Yeah. Okay. But if we could now move to the business at hand, I think this is the legal status discussion that we need to have. So the slides I'm showing up right now, Nick, are about the business status and the stuff that Anna has suggested we look at with regards to incorporation. So if you could take us down that pathway.
Yeah. Well, so we're now debating agenda item 2 on incorporation. So the 3 items here in front of me are incorporation, yes or no, what type of organisation, incorporated association, company, which state to incorporate in case you opt for association. So, look, I'll just open the floor. I'll be listening. I don't have strong views on this.
Well, the most common legal form for not-for-profits in Australia tends to be incorporated association. That means that there are it's cheap to do, and the reporting requirements are fairly non-onerous. The alternative which we considered and which Anne Cregan raised via email was to consider company as a form. There are more reporting requirements if we take that path, and it's more expensive to do. So I was leaning towards incorporated association.
And what are the advantages?
If we're an incorporated association, we incorporate in one state, and so for fundraising purposes, it means that we can get a fundraising license in that state, but it's a little bit more complex, sort of operating nationally, which is what we want to do. Being a company, I believe, will sort of bypass that single state issue.
And what's the rough cost disparity?
Between incorporating different states, you mean, Nick?
No. Well,
association
I mean, I'm a bit confused, because incorporated to me means a company, but you're saying there's a distinction between an incorporated association and a company.
Yes.
Okay, so we're being told that the company would be essentially be done under ASIC, national company rules, and the incorporation would be state-based.
So if we incorporate in Victoria, for instance, Nick, we would report to Consumer Affairs Victoria.
Yeah. So what's the relative cost of the two things?
Is it in that brief of Anna?
Anna, do you want to explain what you said? You did send around some things into the board. Do you want to have a little explanation about that?
I don't think Anna was going to join us today.
I mean, David.
I'm sorry. I was thinking Anne. That's my apologies. That's my bad, as they say.
Anne?
I think you're muted.
I can't hear her. She might be muted, Anne, or something. Can't hear a word. And you're not muted. Can other people hear Anne?
No.
No, not yet.
Nope.
Let me.
Can't hear.
No, I don't think we have Anne's microphone on. I've got it unmuted. But
would you like to type your response, Anne?
So one of the things that I'd like to get out is people's recommendations for where we're going. So Fiona and I have had a little conversation, and to lay my cards on the table to help get conversation going, I think Melbourne, at least, we've got quite a few activities, and it's really paramount that, and I don't think there's any problem that any one state can decide to incorporate and we can be under a common umbrella, but for Melbourne to start going out and fundraising for its various events, to start doing stuff, it does need to have some kind of legal status. So I think, and Fiona, Maia, stop me, because you're obviously the leaders of the community here in Melbourne, but it seemed obvious that we could move on this quite soon with the board's permission, and that there's no reason why anyone else, whether that's Sydney or Brisbane or Western Australia, wouldn't be able to incorporate for their state as well. But I'm speaking out of turn here. Maia or Fiona, what are your thoughts? Especially Fiona, since you understand the charitable status stuff, having previously worked at the ACN.
Yeah, Fiona, I think this is very much your world.
Well, I was just the data wrangler, but no, my inclination would be to incorporate, I think in Victoria at this time, because this is the most active group at the moment. A couple of people voted for ACT, I suppose on the grounds that that's where GovHack is sort of running out of. But yeah, we would be able to add other associated bodies as the other states become more active. But as I
don't really understand.
I'm sorry, Nick, what's that?
I don't understand why, if you're incorporated in Melbourne, in Victoria, and the ACT branch wants to raise some money, I can't understand why they wouldn't just put the money in the Victorian account. Everyone knows what's happening. What's the problem?
It's not that simple.
Yeah. So there are some implications around insurance and also liabilities around operating. So, for example, when we incorporated the Connected Community Hackerspace here in Melbourne, we're not actually allowed to conduct business, in quotes, outside of the state of Victoria, because we're not protected by the association rules if we do that.
Well, yeah, all right.
And fundraising licenses, fundraising is all state-based, the regulation of that. It was meant to become centralised with the ACNC, but I don't think that will be happening now.
So the next question then is, how? I mean, but it would be relatively easy to transition into a company when it became appropriate to do so. We'd have a bank account, and we would indicate that we'd put that money into the account of the company.
Yes, if we decided down the line it was the more appropriate structure, we would be able to do that.
Yeah. And likewise, if the ACT wants to, if the ACT is starting to suffer, starting to feel the shoe pinching as far as being effectively having to operate through Victoria, then they can incorporate in the ACT as well.
So can I just make a quick comment on costs? So it's Paul here. So if you go with the model rules of association, which, if I remember correctly, you can't sell products or raise money, if I remember correctly, with the model rules. It's $32 or $50. It's in that range. But if you actually modify the rule, 180 or 280, and so for me, that's up around the cost of operating a company anyway.
I didn't hear half of that. So it's $50 for a simple arrangement, and how much if you want to change the rules?
Do you want me to run through that again?
Well, no, I just wanted you to answer the question if you heard it.
Can you run your question again, sorry?
Yeah, sure. So it's about $50 for associating if it's a simple thing and it doesn't involve messing with any standard rules, and then it's another amount if you do want to change the rules, and I didn't hear what that was.
That amounts up around $200.
Okay.
And so we would have to do that for each state, of course, that wanted to follow that path. And so my comment was, once we're up around the $200 mark, I think you can incorporate a company for around that cost.
Can you? I mean, you get a company deed and all those things for that cost?
Yes, I guess partly driven by the startup businesses. The costs for doing that have come down substantially.
And then
you can certainly
return. You have to do a company return for ASIC. That's $150 a year. That's a fee, I think. And it's quite onerous. I mean, a private company seems to cost about $1,000 a pop to get audited and all that stuff. I don't know whether that's true.
Yeah, I think, Nicholas, even more importantly, Fiona's point is that the reporting for companies is not stringent. The requirements to ASIC are actually pretty stringent as opposed to the sort of talking about.
Yeah.
So if
So there are also
sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
If the costs are about the same, and in terms of the activities we're wanting to do are much more in line with the less stringent reporting option, and it doesn't prohibit us doing anything, then perhaps we should incorporate in the states we're looking to do, most of our work in. So Vic plus ACT, possibly even New South Wales. So that would be 3 states in which we would want to do fundraising and not have to do onerous reporting.
I was going to make the comment that you still obviously have to lodge an annual statement, but the costs around that aren't too prohibitive. It depends on how much money you're handling. I think there's 3 tiers, and I think the entry tier is about $50.
Well, it sounds to me that, it sounds to me it's pretty clear that we should incorporate, and Melbourne wants to incorporate, so it should incorporate. And if the ACT has to incorporate, it incorporates too. And that's easily the least cost thing to do. And then we sort it out if we want to go to a company structure. If we get bigger and we've got more money to throw around, then we can do that.
Yeah, so there's a couple of questions here from, one from Anne. Can we do that as a national registered body, or do we need to incorporate within the state of New South Wales? Not sure at the point. Fiona, did you want to answer that?
I'm not absolutely certain. I will need to check.
Cool. Okay. David's question is, Marcus, can you help explain?
I'm hoping my bandwidth is holding up okay for this. The table that contrasted incorporated associations and companies, and I think the argument for association is it's just so much more lightweight, and later on you can become a company. So from that perspective, incorporation is good. The incorporation side is different to the registration side. You can become an Australian registered body, I think is the term, in multiple places, but you incorporate in one. So the suggestion of incorporating somewhere and then registering everywhere seems to make a lot of sense to me. And I think it's a recommendation that the NICTA people have put forward. The only other point I was going to make is that I don't see a benefit of picking any particular one. They're all within a few tens of dollars of each other. The only thing, of course, is that if NICTA is providing our support, their GovCluster people are all in Canberra. But that's a paperwork issue, not much over an hour.
So are we starting to, are people, I guess the question is, have they got opinions about the way that they might vote? Because we might be able to take a quick vote on this if people feel they have enough information. Do people feel they have enough information yet to make a decision on this, or if not, ask questions?
I think it's clear what it's clear what the path is, and it's the sort of thing which an efficient way to run a board is for that to come up as a recommendation from a subcommittee, and we just look at it and make sure that we're comfortable with it and we go with it. But it is to incorporate.
Were there any objections to that?
I would suggest then that we incorporate in Victoria in the first place. I've got some contacts at Justice Connect, who are a legal service who specialise in helping not-for-profits through this process, and then we explore registration as a national body, as Anne has just put in the note. Exactly. If nobody has any violent objections to that.
So that goes to James and to Anne. James and Anne, I know you guys probably don't have voice, but can you confirm on the group chat if that's okay with you? Because
yeah, I've got voice.
There he is. Sorry, James. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problems at all with anything that's being said.
Okay.
And yes, Anne confirms her agreement.
So does Marcus. How about you, David?
Yeah, I'm a +1.
Yeah, me too. And Fiona, seeing as it was your suggestion, we'll assume you're a yes. And Nicholas, you're a yes. Yes. Who hasn't got?
Well, I'm going to call a majority. So
yep.
Just want to get through this.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. I really do think that we should be able to just do these kinds of things on the nod. Sometimes, you know, if a difficult issue comes up, then it needs to be sort of curated for the board by the two people who disagree, putting their disagreement as clearly as possible, and then, or three, or however many, and then we discuss it. But this doesn't need to be discussed at board level because it's clear what to do, and we just need a recommendation, and then we go with it, and then it's a board decision. So can I suggest that as a modus operandi wherever possible?
So,
absolutely.
Yeah, I'd second that.
If I'd had any major objection to anything that had been said, I would have piped up.
Yeah. Okay. We now have a carried motion. And do we need to decide which state? We have decided which state. It's Victoria. And you know, if we run into trouble, then we might have to incorporate in ACT. But it sounds like we don't have to. And there isn't at $200. If I count the number of heads and pay us all $10 an hour, we shouldn't be spending too much more time on it. Okay. So we're going to go on to agreement on process of reimbursement for funds spent by local groups. Again, be good to get a recommendation on this. I'd agree with anything that doesn't sound silly. So I presume there's a sort of an existing consensus about what we should do.
With reimbursing Maia for the last dumpling meetup, she submitted receipts and you okayed it. What I was going to suggest is that the responsible ambassador should create a blog post and submit their receipts, and that now I was going to suggest to either chair or co-chair of the board should be allowed to authorize reimbursement and would only refer it if there was some matter which concerned them about the
and I think it should be a co-chair
expenditure.
Unless, I think a co-chair is fine. And these are small costs, and really if somebody wants to go over to the dark side, I'll be very disappointed if they do it for such small change.
Okay, the only possible conflict of interest there, Nicholas, is that Maia and I are both currently.
Yeah. Well, in that case, if there is any
dumpling expenditure, then.
Yeah. Yep. So feel free to pass it by me if you want to.
And is everybody? Yeah. The rest of the board is okay with that as a process?
Yeah, I think we just decided that to expedite this and to make it lightweight. The chairs make the decisions. If the board doesn't like the chairs, they can kick them out yearly on a yearly vote basis. If the chairs need help from the board, they will come ask the board.
That's right. That's right. The board can even kick the chairs out sooner than that if they feel strongly enough about it. Okay, for support of local ambassadors post-GovHack, including allocation of funding to support local events. I don't have a presenter or initiator, but it's not me.
Right, that was me as well.
Okay.
As Anne has some news that they've got a new ambassador, or will be announcing a new ambassador in Sydney at GovHack. What I would like to do, and I just wanted to advise the board that I'm intending to do this, is try and collect up some of the GovHack organisers and encourage them to, think about being active as ambassadors and running some events throughout the year as well. I've got the GovHack National Call straight after this, actually. So we'll be raising that matter then. So yeah, just wanting to alert the board to that, and that it was, I don't know yet, and I will have to follow up with Pia what sort of surplus we're looking at from GovHack this year, but that that funding should be made available to new ambassadors or established ambassadors even to support their activities.
Okay.
So I unfortunately got dropped off the call. I had one question about that. So reimbursement there makes perfect sense, and I agree. But given that we're probably operating to some constraints funding-wise, what's our approval process before launching into that sort of stuff?
Paul, you might want to look back through the minutes on the group chat because we've just gone through that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
I'm just aware that we've got 20 minutes left and a lot of updates.
Yeah, okay. Just by the way, Fiona, I tried to drop into GovHack last night and it just got too late. I was coming in from Adelaide and
yes, we spoke.
I'm sorry about that, but I want to stay in touch with it. Then we've got 5, the open data report, which we brought up to number 1. 6, open knowledge, more than open data discussion. David.
So I'm going to pass on that one because I think we can talk about that later. I think we've actually got excellent representation of that later on, as demonstrated via Maia and Paul. Maia talking about Health Hack, that it's not just GovHack, that there's the open data inside of health, and then also Paul with open hardware and its usage. We had a recent C14 hack, which is carbon information. So I think we're starting to see a proliferation of these events, and I want to see us continue to support them and make sure that we don't just see this as an open data initiative. That's about it.
Okay. So what do we? This is a bit confusing, although I'm not looking at the. No, I can't even see the slides that you've provided, David. I've got. Well, by the way, I meant David Pekotic, not David. David, the other David. Is David Pekotic there?
No, he's not here this evening.
Okay. Okay, so now I'm actually at the end of the agenda that was supplied to me by Anna, although page 2 has a number 2 and a number 3 on it, and that's a bit unclear. Number 2 is on the incorporation thing, which we've covered.
Actually, I think we're up to Fiona's update about the Global ICT Summit in Japan.
Oh yes, we haven't covered that. So Fiona, go if you like.
Right, well, I was recently invited to the OGP Summit in Bali, where I spoke about Open Knowledge Foundation and, in particular, GovHack, as the focus of the event was open government. And that was really interesting. It got me really thinking about that sort of intersection between open knowledge and open government and open data and eGov and all these areas of interest which are related, although not the same thing. And I suppose my real takeaway from that experience was thinking about sort of the public interest aspect to open knowledge and open data. And certainly in comparison to some of the work being done by activists around the world, GovHack did look, in comparison, like a slightly self-indulgent exercise in some ways. But, yeah, so I guess sort of trying to think more about the public interest aspect to what we do and making sure that we are, that we do have a diverse community and that we're not solely mucking around entertaining ourselves, I guess. And so, I mean, in the short term, it means that I would like to be talking more to some of the transparency activists. We've got a couple from Transparency International coming along to Melbourne GovHack, and we talked last year, but I don't think it ever eventuated. Sorry, Nicholas?
Who's coming from Transparency International?
Don't have the names off the top of my head. I'll have to dig through the emails.
Okay, so I went along to the C20 because of the significance of the C20 and the G20. If anybody is wondering what the C20 is, it's NGOs. You may be aware that as part of the G20, they are having, everyone and their dog gets to call their own little, they start their own little 20 group. So there's B20 for business and Y20 for youth and C20 for the community and T20 for thinkers, and it goes on and on. And the C20 was in Melbourne this weekend, so I got quite thick with a lot of the Transparency International people, and It was all pretty interesting.
Yeah, well, no, I will follow that up with you then. Yeah, and then Japan, where I spoke at the Global ICT Summit and met the Open Knowledge Japan crew, which was a lot of fun, and just made me realise what good access we do have to government here. While sometimes it feels like it's a challenge to find the right people. The Open Knowledge Japan guys were pretty astonished that we'd managed to have Meet the Data owners in the pub, and that we did have that level of trust with some of our government partners. So that was really heartening.
Good.
And I will blog about both experiences. I have draft blog posts which I just need to finish.
Okay.
Next up on the updates agenda, we have James. James, can you provide an update on the your item?
Yeah, and it's pretty much following on from that. It's like my impressions of coming into this group and looking where it's at right now, and I do kind of feel very much that same thing. I don't know if we're necessarily preaching to the converted, but I think there's a lot of things that could be done, not to replace what people are doing now, but in addition to what we're already doing, that could really broaden the awareness and appeal of the organisation. I'm very keen on this idea of running big sort of public, much more general sort of events that aren't necessarily appealing to the nerd audience, but are appealing to a broader audience out there who are interested in these topics and some of the broader sort of things that come up. I know Anna D up here did a little test one with opening genomic data and had a little debate about these sort of things. And I had some interesting, intelligent, engaging people there talking about these issues, and with very little sort of funding or advertising or anything like that. 25 people sort of showed up and were really engaged and really interested. I think we can take that to a significantly higher level and really push these as... Now, I was sort of thinking of initially doing these sort of things on a topic-by-topic basis, but I've actually started to think about the idea of doing annual debates, as they were, about specific issues. So around, say medicine and open information and media and open information, and doing these in different cities, and looking at trying to link up with people like from the ABC, the Big Ideas Partnership thing, and do we get to the degree where you get someone like a Geraldine Doog or Andrew Denton or these sort of well-known people presenting these things, who are basically going to pull people in. If you hear about one of these events and you know, Wiley Daly is presenting it or something like that, you'll get a lot more people coming to these sorts of things. I was kind of... It struck me the other a few weeks ago when I just looked, actually for the first time, at the WikiLeaks webpage and the About Us, and the first line in there is, WikiLeaks is a media organisation. And to my mind, that sort of thing, that's very much more where I'm aligned from. And I'm not saying that everyone else has to have that sort of outlook, but I really think we're doing an awful lot of work on the engine, and I think we can do a little bit of work on the steering wheel and the seat, and we can make the car go into really interesting places. There's also the other thoughts I've been having are about I think okay, you really should be the place that journalists come to find out about what's going on. Like when there's a story that breaks about a particular issue that's relevant to us, we need to be seen as the spokespeople for this sort of thing, and I don't think we really are. And I think there's a lot of simple things that we can do to create that sort of situation. I've got a fair bit of experience with that sort of thing, and I won't go into details right now, but it's very simple stuff we can do to have a persona and have a be a voice that people recognise and want to hear.
So James, I think that's a fantastic idea. I know Geraldine Doog personally anyway, just since you mentioned her, but what it leads me to think is, just to my Melbourne colleagues here, is a guy called Jeffrey Taylor, who I know runs Melbourne Conversations, and I think on the back of our report, it could. I'll email him now. I got from him earlier today. He was trying to get me to spruik something about the federal budget, which is pretty important in my opinion. So I will. I think that's an excellent suggestion, and there are, not only is it a good suggestion, but it can be immediately turned into action. I think, at least by me.
There's a little event called G20 coming up. I don't know if you've heard. It's madness that we would not be doing anything, based on that.
Well, I mean, that would chime in completely with Martin's agenda and with the report and all that sort of stuff. So I think that's something we should have that as an agenda item for the next meeting. What are we going to do and how are we going to do it? So James, would you be prepared to give us a one-page proposal?
I'll have a crack.
Half a page if necessary.
Yeah, half a page.
One paragraph. Would you believe? I'm feeling like Maxwell Smart here. Would you believe one sentence with a footnote?
A tweet, perhaps.
Okay.
All right,
and
next up on the agenda. Sorry, go ahead, Nick. I want to remind us we've got about 8 minutes left, about 4 more topics.
You go, David. What's next up? It's
Maia's up next with Health Hack. After Maia is Paul, and then we can do any other business. Hopefully we can crack through those and be done on the hour.
Cool.
Yeah, okay. Go, Maia.
I'll be really fast. Health Hack planning positioning pretty well. There's been a lot of business in other parts of Australia as well. So Open Knowledge Foundation is partnering with the Health Informatics Society of Australia on it's going to get a fair bit of support. We've also been in conversation with a group in Canada called Hacking Health, who've been running essentially Health Hack, except more around entrepreneurial people and entrepreneurial groups in hospitals and around healthcare in Canada, and we might be partnering them as well. I would absolutely love support helping run Health Hack in other parts of Australia that aren't Melbourne. There are a lot of so there's a lot of people interested. The Garvan Institute in Sydney, Cairo in Brisbane, and in Sydney. There's going to be a small team in Perth that's going to be running Health Hack there as soon as we can find the scientist with a problem, which, or health people with problems. I don't know about you. Every health person I've spoken to has problems, so it shouldn't be too hard to find. If you know anybody who might be interested in taking it on, we'll be doing a lot of the admin, the advertising, the fundraising, organising prizes from Melbourne, and we can offer a lot of support. We just need a person on the ground to make sure that everything runs smoothly. So if you know anyone, say a student or somebody who might be interested, very similar sort of work to running GovHack, except with a lot of support.
Brilliant. Thanks, Maia.
So next,
Paul?
David, you know what's next. I don't.
Paul, would you like to talk about open hardware and where that's progressing? Have we lost Paul? I think we might have lost Paul on the bandwidth connection. Which is fine. I think it brings us to any other business. Is there any other agenda items we've missed out? I would promise I'll tighten up the agenda for next time, but just to quickly whip around. And Nicholas, James, Fiona, Maia, Paul, Nick, is there anything else you'd like to highlight? I'm getting head shakes.
No, I'm just drafting an email. I'm just going to send you guys, the Melbourne people. I'll copy in the others, but the Melbourne people, well, the people I know are Melbourne people, which are the 3 who are here at the moment, just with the stuff from Jeff Taylor, so you know what it is. It's called Melbourne Conversation.
Brilliant. I think that covers all the agenda items. Nick, is there anything else you want to say as chairman?
No.
Okay, if I can get a wave goodbye from everybody, I'll do a big swing around, and we'll see you in well, bi-monthly as usual. So looking forward to seeing you all then.
I think we should sway as if we are about 14 years old and in a disco. A 14-year-old disco. A blue light disco. Nobody's. I've got one taker.
We might need an Open Knowledge Foundation handshake, Nick. We can have a gangster handshake next.
Well, it has to be open. What's the point of that?
That's true. Okay, I'm going to stop the broadcast. Thanks for anybody who's managed to watch this.
Thanks all.
Cheers.
See you all. Bye.